Yes, the Archivest interviewing MARC EMERY, the Prince of Pot. Who is the one and only MARC EMERY?
Well, you can't say anybody's life or personality can be summarized very briefly, but I would say that for the last 30 years, after reading Ayn Rand and being influenced by my early childhood heroes in comic books like Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, and various kind of archetypal superhero or heroic figures, I was influenced 30 years ago to make my whole life a career for social justice, fighting against prohibition, fighting against government oppression, government encroachment. Basically, I've always found that the government is the enemy of the people, and that we need more and more people fighting the government and exposing what they are, a monopoly on the use of force, an agent of coercion that is making the planet a worse place to live. So for the last 30 years, that's what I've been doing, and I'm in 8 movies, including some like Escape to Canada, which is a wonderful movie, Prince of Pot, which is a movie about me, made by CBC. I'm in a great movie called The Union, which explains how the marijuana business all works. And I'm in numerous others. Super Jaime is a comedy I'm in, and there's other ones, Naked Queen and what have you. I'm in lots of documentaries too. National Geographic's Explore has put me in Inside Marijuana, one called Marijuana Nation, another one called Super Weed. I'm on numerous documentaries on other stations. I'm covered in 60 Minutes in 2006, and you can find all these things on Google and YouTube if you want to see the video history of me. There's a great new movie about me, a biopic called The Principle, Principle, of pot, and it covers the first 30 years of my work right up to the present. So it's a great little thing. It's 4 hours, though. I guess it's not that little. But there's so much archival footage around about me, considering you're the archival guy, that it's worth people's while to check me out on YouTube, and there's all sorts of fabulous stuff.
And how did you get the name Prince of Pot?
That was given to me in 1997 by CNN. They did a worldwide broadcast called CNN Visits Canada's Prince of Pot. And it was so popular, and they rebroadcasted it 2 or 3 times, that other media have always used it. Time Magazine, Rolling Stone, 60 Minutes, virtually everybody used it. In fact, even when I was arrested by the DEA, the warrant said, wanted for extradition, Mark Scott Emery, a.k.a. the Prince of Pot. So even the DEA uses it. So it's a term that's just gotten popular, because, they like those kind of things in the media. But I kind of like that term. I'm honored to be the Prince of Pot. Everywhere I go, people do refer to me like that. And I think it's a title I like to think I've earned.
And tell us about Cannabis Culture Magazine.
Well, Cannabis Culture Magazine was one of the things that's important to know about Canadian cannabis history is that books and magazines about marijuana were banned by the Canadian federal government from 1987 to 1995. So when we finally overturned that law in 1995, we put out our own magazine called Cannabis Canada, which by 1998 became Cannabis Culture, and published until last year in 2009 when we decided that print was dead and very costly and very wasteful, and that we'd be better off putting all our energy into an online presence, which has worked out really well for us. It's saved a lot of costs. It's improved our advertising on our website, and we're much faster now. The difficulty about a magazine that comes out once every month or once every 2 months is that everything is stale dated. And, when we first started 15 years ago, everybody was content to have a magazine come out in that periodical schedule because there was no internet. The World Wide Web just started in 1994. So people weren't used to getting their information instantly, regularly, with constant updates and feedback. Well, now, in that kind of world, we can't have a magazine come out every 2 months and be relevant. And additionally, half of all magazines sold on newsstands, including ours, would be destroyed. And so you're slaughtering a small Canadian forest, essentially, to have a lot of it thrown in landfill sites, and it's really hard to recycle colored paper because the inks are all toxic. And so all things considered, we thought, well, we should stop publishing and go online, and that's been a much better thing. But we are much more responsive on a day-to-day basis. We organize a lot of campaigns, a lot of political activity. I myself, over 10 years, financed with $4 million political parties and candidates all over the world, including like the Israeli Green Leaf Party in 2003, or the New Zealand Legalized Marijuana Party in 1999, or the BC Marijuana Party in British Columbia here, and all throughout the world we've supported political parties and advocated political activity, whether it's a demonstration, a Supreme Court challenge, ballot initiatives. We financed ballot initiatives throughout the United States in the 90s and the early part of this decade. So, we spent $4 million on some incredible stuff and accomplished some many, many incredible things, and a lot of that's covered in all the movies they've done about me.
And what's the word on Pot TV?
Well, Pot TV still exists, but the problem is it doesn't make any money. It's hard to get sponsors. You know, our programming, which started in the year 2000, Pot TV started as a Millennium project for us in 2000, and you know, it's very popular because for the first 6 years there was no YouTube, and there was very little streaming archival media around because it was very expensive. Bandwidth was so pricey. In the year 2002, for example, we paid $15,000 a month in streaming fees for Pot TV. So the more popular we became, the more money we were losing and was costing us. So it was a very challenging thing in the era before YouTube, and now with YouTube, everybody's got a video streaming thing, and so it's hard to compete there. So, you know, even when I do videos for YouTube, you might see 4,000 to 10,000 people view them, which in the era of Pot TV was adequate because it was the only thing around and people would recirculate the information. But again, and we used to have 2 full-time staffers and invest a lot of good production in those shows. They were really, really exquisite because in that era it's an art form. But now with YouTube, what is it, loading 50,000 new videos every day or something like that? You know, it's become the fact that it's become much more popular is great for everybody else, but not good for the people who are making a professional go at being unique. Now there's just too much out there. There's a lot of restrictions on my liberty. I can't talk about seeds. I'm not allowed to have a cell phone. I can't leave the province of British Columbia without court permission, all of which is expensive. So I have a lot of these restrictions on my behavior, even though I'm not charged with anything in Canada. Right? These are charges in the United States, you know. And it looks like I will be turning myself in Monday to serve a 5-year sentence in the United States for just selling seeds out of my office right here in Vancouver.
And how did you become one of the greatest activists in all of Canada?
It's just perseverance. You know, one of the most important lessons in politics for any kind of thing is, first of all, victory goes to those who show up, right? The elections go to those who show up and vote. You know, political demonstrations happen and are effective because somebody showed up. People go to meetings, they show up, things happen, right? So I've just been very determined. I had a battle plan starting in 1990. I would raise lots of money. I would start a revolution. I would spend that money with all sorts of different people and groups so that we would be launching this revolution on many prongs. I'm studied in the works of Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi and Lysander Spooner and famous anarchists and civil disobedience of the past. So I learned from their mistakes and their experience and read their books and then develop a blueprint. And our blueprint was, first of all, to establish media for our culture, like the gay community has, right? When the gay liberation movement started in the late 60s, early 70s, they got hold of a media. So they started books, magazines, publications, right? Well, we have magazines, we have internet sites. And then you want to establish social clubs. So we have a club upstairs for marijuana, like the gay community has, right? And then we target demonstrations to the streets. So in 1997, we started the Global Marijuana March, and in 1995 we started the 420 celebrations, right? Public demonstrations of our community. And then we developed political parties, like gay people just started becoming part of the political establishment, right? So I looked at the feminist revolutions and the gay revolutions throughout the world, and I learned a lot from their methods too, so that now we, in the marijuana community, we have lots of media, lots of demonstrations, lots of social clubs, lots of medical clubs. We have acknowledgement and recognition that we're a legitimate culture as a result of the kind of blueprint I put together. When I started in 1990, when books and magazines were banned in Canada about marijuana, there was no movement. There were no demonstrations throughout the 80s, there were no rallies, there was no nothing. So we literally reinvented that from the ground up and gave so much money to people in the United States that it helped them in their political revolution as well. So that medical marijuana and marijuana legalization now are on ballots in many of the United States. There's legislation already in place. Things are happening.